The emergency session of the Galactic Council was not going well. Then again, emergency sessions never went well when humans were involved. Ambassador Clorp adjusted all 7 of his eye stalks to focus on the holographic display hovering above the marble conference table. His tentacles twitched nervously, a sign that anyone who'd worked with him for more than 5 minutes recognized as impending panic. Around the circular chamber, representatives from 43 species watched in uncomfortable silence. The kind of silence that happens when everyone knows they're about to hear something terrible, but nobody wants to be the first to say it out loud. Esteemed colleagues, Clorp began, his translator chip converting his native bioluminescent flashes into standard galactic. We have a problem. The humans have won another battle. Another one? Groaned Representative Thrix, a crystalline being who'd been hoping to retire before dealing with any more human-related incidents. That's the 8th one this cycle. What did they do this time? Clorp's tentacles performed what could only be described as a full-body grimace. They converted a civilian cargo hauler into a weapon by, and I'm reading directly from the report here, filling it with expired cafeteria food and launching it at Mach 7 into the enemy flagship's bridge. The council chamber erupted in confused chittering, horrified gasps, and one species equivalent of hysterical laughter, which sounded like grinding metal. But that's not the worst part, Clorp continued, pulling up another file. His main eye stalk focused on the assembled representatives, while the other 6 darted around nervously, as if expecting a human to crash through the ceiling at any moment. Before every single engagement, before every impossible victory, before every laws of physics-defying stunt, our intelligence has intercepted the same phrase, the same 3 words that apparently signal the beginning of another nightmare for whoever's unfortunate enough to be fighting them. He pressed a button. A audio recording crackled through the chamber's speakers, tinny but clear. A human voice, casual as someone ordering lunch, said, "Hold my beer." Silence. Complete. Absolute silence. "What?" Thrix said slowly. "Does that mean?" Clorp's tentacles drooped in defeat. "We have no idea. Our best xenolinguists have been analyzing it for weeks. Hold my beer." The words translate clearly enough. The meaning? He made a gesture that was the galactic equivalent of a shrug, which involved briefly turning himself inside out. "We think it's a battle cry, or a prayer, or possibly a suicide note. Honestly, we're not sure humans know the difference." "Have you tried asking them?" suggested Ambassador Yith, who was new to the council and still optimistic about things like logic and reasonable discourse. Every veteran council member turned to look at Yith with expressions of profound pity. "We tried," Clorp said quietly. "They just laughed, and said we wouldn't understand. Then one of them patted me on the head and called me adorable." His eye stalks shuddered at the memory. "I'm a decorated military strategist with 300 years of experience." Representative Thrix leaned forward, her crystalline structure refracting the chamber's light into anxious patterns. "Ambassador Clorp, what exactly are you proposing?" Clorp pulled up a star map, highlighting recent human victories. They formed a pattern that looked less like strategic military conquest and more like someone had sneezed on the map. "I'm proposing we figure out what that phrase means before we lose any more fleets to their madness. Because whatever happens after a human says those 3 words, it's going to defy every tactical doctrine we've ever written. And somehow, impossibly, it's going to work." He closed the display and looked around the chamber with all 7 eye stalks. "The humans are either the greatest military geniuses in the galaxy, or the luckiest idiots in the universe. Either way, we need to understand them before someone makes the mistake of actually trying to fight them seriously." In the back of the chamber, an aide was already updating the official Galactic Council database. Under Human Battle Tactics, she added a new entry. Threat level, hold my beer. Probability of success, inexplicably high. Recommended response, run. 3 sectors away from the Galactic Council's anxiety-induced emergency session, Captain Jake Riley was doing what he did best. Absolutely nothing resembling proper military protocol. The SS Bad Idea, a name that had been chosen by crew vote and somehow approved by command because apparently nobody read paperwork anymore, drifted through the Epsilon sector on what was technically called a routine patrol. In reality, it was the kind of assignment you got when your superiors wanted you far away from anything important that you could accidentally blow up. "Captain," Lieutenant Priya Patel called from the medical station, not looking up from her tablet. "I'm updating the crew medical files, and I need to know, for the official record, how exactly did you break your arm last week?" Jake spun lazily in the captain's chair, which he'd modified to recline way further back than regulation allowed. "Training exercise." "Jake, fine. I tried to see if I could slide down the maintenance shaft using just my jacket as a brake. And could you? For about 4 seconds. Yeah. It was awesome. Priya finally looked up, her expression the carefully cultivated deadpan of someone who'd given up on safety protocols approximately 3 days into serving under Jake's command. That was 2 years ago. I'm putting down stupidity-related injury in the file. Again. That's the 14th one this quarter. That's a new record, chirped Ensign Tommy Kowalski from the navigation console. At 22, he was the youngest member of the crew and treated every day like he was playing the galaxy's most expensive video game, which, given humanity's approach to space combat, wasn't entirely inaccurate. We should celebrate. We're not celebrating the captain's repeated injuries, kid, Priya said, though there was no real conviction in her voice. She'd long since accepted that serving on the bad idea meant embracing chaos or going insane. She'd chosen chaos. It came with better stories. Tommy spun in his chair, grinning. Did you guys see the bounty board this morning? The Krellian Empire just put 1,000,000 credits on any ship that can defeat one of their battle fleets. Tommy, Jake said, sitting up slightly. Why are you looking at bounty boards during duty hours? Why are you looking at them? Tommy shot back. I'm the captain. I'm allowed to be a bad influence. That is not how chain of command works, Priya muttered. But nobody was listening anymore. Jake pulled up the bounty listing on the main screen. Sure enough, there it was. 1,000,000 galactic credits for anyone who could take down a Krellian battle fleet. The listing included a note that said, "Humans need not apply," in very small text at the bottom. Huh, Jake said, stroking his chin thoughtfully. They specifically said we can't apply. That's probably because the last 3 fleets we fought are still in therapy, Priya pointed out. The Krellian ambassador filed an official complaint with Earth Command about our disturbing disregard for conventional warfare. They said it was a compliment, Jake protested. They absolutely did not. Tommy was already running calculations at his console, his fingers flying across the holographic interface. You know what's weird, though? Krellian fleets usually patrol the Outer Rim. We're in the Outer Rim. Statistical probability of us encountering one is actually pretty high. Kid, are you suggesting we go looking for a fight? Jake asked. I'm not suggesting anything, Captain. I'm just saying, statistically speaking, if a Krellian fleet were fun to, hypothetically, show up right now, it would be a real shame if we weren't prepared to, accidentally collect that bounty we're not allowed to apply for. Priya looked between them, her medical scanner still in hand. You two realize that wanting to fight a battle fleet for fun is literally a diagnostic criterion for several psychological disorders. Is one of them being awesome? Jake asked. No, then I don't have it. The ship's proximity alarm chose that exact moment to start blaring. Tommy's console lit up like a Christmas tree, which in hindsight should have been everyone's first clue that the universe had a sense of humor and it was terrible. Guys? Tommy said, his voice climbing an octave. 15 Krellian warships just dropped out of hyperspace. Right in front of us. Like, directly in front of us. Jake and Priya looked at each other, then at Tommy, then at the view screen, which now displayed a very impressive, very hostile-looking fleet of angular warships bristling with enough weapons to glass a small moon. Jake slowly stood up, walked over to the small fridge he'd installed next to the captain's chair against at least 7 different regulations, and pulled out a beer. He cracked it open, took one sip, and handed it to Priya. Hold my beer, he said. Priya's face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Confusion, realization, resignation, and finally, the tired acceptance of someone who knew exactly what was about to happen and had already started planning the medical response. Tommy pumped his fist in the air. Yes, this is going to be epic. This is going to be a court-martial, Priya corrected, but she was already moving to her emergency medical station and strapping in. Because she'd been on the bad idea long enough to know that when Jake Riley said those 3 words, physics was about to become a suggestion, and sanity was about to take a vacation. Commander Zorth of the Krellian Imperial Fleet had been having a good day up until approximately 30 seconds ago. His 15 warships had executed a perfect hyperspace jump. His crew was well-trained and disciplined, and he'd just received word that he was being considered for promotion. Everything was going according to plan. Then he saw what was waiting for them in normal space. Commander, his tactical officer said, her scales rippling with confusion. Sensors detect a single human vessel. Designation, SS Bad Idea. Zorth's reptilian eyes narrowed. The SS what now? Bad idea, sir. It appears to be a modified cargo frigate. Crew complement of 3. Armament is, She paused, checking her scanner again. Sir, I'm reading 2-point defense turrets, and what appears to be a really aggressive attitude. 3 crew members, Zorth repeated slowly. He looked at his fleet of 15 warships, each capable of reducing a small planet to rubble. Then, back at the single, ridiculous human ship that was just floating there like it didn't have a care in the universe. Are they hailing us? No, sir. They appear to be having an internal discussion. Our translators are picking up fragments. Something about statistics and beer. This was it, Zorth thought. This was his moment. The moment he'd been training for his entire military career. A human ship, outnumbered 15-1, with no backup in range. He'd capture them, study their tactics, bring them back to the Empire as proof of Krellian superiority. His promotion was guaranteed. Open a channel, Zorth commanded, straightening his ceremonial armor. Human vessel, this is Commander Zorth of the Krellian Imperial Fleet. You are outnumbered and outgunned. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Surrender now, and you will be treated according to the Galactic conventions. There was a pause. Then the view screen flickered to life, revealing a human male with messy brown hair, wearing what appeared to be a uniform shirt that was only partially tucked in. He was smiling. That should have been Zorth's first warning. Hey there, Commander, the human said cheerfully. I'm Captain Jake Riley. Nice fleet you got there. Very intimidating. Really good symmetrical formation. Must have taken forever to coordinate. Zorth blinked. You understand the situation you're in, human? Oh yeah, totally. 15-1. No backup. Statistically, we're completely screwed. Jake leaned back in his chair. Quick question, though. You guys have shields, right? Of course we have shields. Military grade. Rated for why are you asking about our shields? Just curious, professionally speaking. Jake glanced off screen. Kid, what's our current distance? A younger voice called back. 12,000 kilometers, and closing, Captain. They're moving into attack formation. Perfect. Jake turned back to Zorth, still smiling that unsettling smile. So here's the thing, Commander. I'm looking at your formation, and I gotta say, it's textbook. Really by the book stuff. Which got me thinking. You know what else is by the book? Zorth's tactical officer leaned closer. Sir, the human ship is rotating to face us directly. They're not powering weapons. What are they powering? Zorth demanded. Everything else, sir. Back on the view screen, Jake was still talking. See, I was reading through the Galactic Naval Combat Manual last week. Couldn't sleep. Boring stuff. Mostly. But there was this one interesting section about minimum safe distances for waste disposal systems. You guys read that section? Waste disposal? Zorth felt his scales begin to itch, which happened when he was confused or about to make a terrible mistake. What does waste disposal have to do with… Oh, you'll see, Jake interrupted. He held up one finger. Hold on 1 second. Gotta make this official. He turned away from the screen. Doc, you got my beer? A female voice, sounding deeply tired. Unfortunately, yes. Hold my beer, Jake said, and even through the translation, Matrix, Zorth could tell those 3 words meant something significant. Something terrible. The human ship's engines flared bright blue. Not attack bright. Not emergency retreat bright. Something else entirely. Something that made Zorth's tactical computer start screaming warnings that didn't make any sense. Sir, his tactical officer said, her voice climbing. The human ship just redirected all power from life support, weapons, and shields directly to engines, and I don't know how this is possible. They're sanitation systems. They're what? They're accelerating directly at us. Current speed, Mach 2, and climbing. Their waste disposal bays are open, and, oh, ancestors preserve us, they're not empty. On the view screen, Jake Riley waved. So about that minimum safe distance for waste disposal? The manual says it's 5,000 kilometers from any other vessel. We're currently at 11,000. His smile widened. But regulations are more like guidelines, right? Zorth's blood ran. Cold. He wouldn't. Sir, he's absolutely going to. But that's insane. That's not even a weapon. That's just biological waste and garbage, and at Mach 7, sir, everything is a weapon. Jake's voice came through the speakers one more time, cheerful as ever. Kid, you remember that physics lesson about kinetic energy? The one where velocity matters more than mass? Already calculated, Captain, the young voice responded, audibly excited. At our current acceleration, we'll hit terminal velocity in 45 seconds. Impact force equivalent to a Class 3 missile strike. Beautiful. Doc, you strapped in? I hate you so much right now. Love you too. Okay, Commander Zorth, it's been real. See you in a few seconds. Literally. The communication cut off. Zorth stared at his tactical display as a single human ship, powered by what could only be described as weaponized stupidity, accelerated directly toward the center of his perfect formation. The ship's waste disposal systems were ejecting everything they had, creating a spreading cloud of frozen sewage, garbage, and what his sensors identified as approximately 700 empty beer cans. At Mach 7, evasive action, Zorth screamed. But his beautiful textbook formation was too tight, too perfect, too by the book. His ships collided with each other, trying to scatter, shields sparking as they scraped together, and the SS Bad Idea, trailing its disgusting payload like the universe's most offensive comet, plowed directly through the middle of his fleet. Somewhere in the back of his mind, Zorth realized he'd just learned what "hold my beer" meant. He really wished he hadn't. The thing about insane plans is that they only work if everyone involved commits completely to the insanity. Half-hearted crazy just gets you killed. Full throttle, no brakes, hold my beer crazy? That gets you into history books. Or court-martialed, usually both. Match 4 in climbing, Tommy screamed from the navigation console, his voice cracking with a mixture of terror and absolute glee. Hull temperature rising. Waste disposal efficiency at maximum. We are literally the fastest garbage truck in the galaxy. Jake gripped his captain's chair as the ship shuddered and groaned around them. Every rivet was screaming. Every weld was questioning its life choices. And somewhere in the cargo bay, something was definitely on fire. Doc, how's our structural integrity? Well, the good news is we haven't exploded yet, Priya called back, checking her medical readouts while simultaneously bracing herself against the wall. The bad news is physics says we should have exploded about 30 seconds ago, so we're officially in borrowed time territory. I'll take it. Kid, trajectory? Threading the needle, Captain. We're gonna pass directly through their formation in, 20 seconds. 15. 10 if we don't die first. Tommy's fingers danced across his console, making micro-adjustments to ground rens, their suicidal trajectory. Also, fun fact, the Krellian ships are trying to scatter, but they're too close together. 3 of them just collided. We haven't even hit them yet, and we're winning. That's the spirit. Jake punched up the external camera feed. The view screen showed the Krellian fleet ahead of them, ships desperately trying to break formation, their shields flickering as they scraped against each other in panic. Behind the Bad Idea, a glittering trail of frozen waste and debris spread out like the universe's most disgusting contrail. Okay, Phase 2. Doc, you ready? I'm a medical officer, not a weapons specialist. And also I'm pretty sure Phase 2 violates the Geneva Conventions, Priya shouted back. Good thing we're not on Geneva. That's not how that works. Jake ignored her and pulled up the ship's secondary systems. Remember that experimental mining laser we were supposed to deliver to the asteroid colony? Priya's voice went flat. Jake, tell me you're not thinking what I think you're thinking. I'm thinking that if we angle it just right and bounce it off our debris field, we can create the galaxy's first ever weaponized disco ball effect. There was a long pause filled only with the sound of straining engines and Tommy's hysterical giggling. That's not even remotely scientific, Priya said finally. Neither is what we're currently doing, and yet here we are, not dead. Yet. Not dead yet. Details. Kid, can you calculate the reflection angles? Tommy was already on it, his console showing a bewildering array of trajectories that looked less like tactical plotting and more like abstract art. On it, Captain. If I route the laser through the engineering port and trigger it at… Oh man, this is so stupid. At exactly the moment we pass through their formation, the beam should bounce off our frozen garbage field and hit at least… let me recalculate. Okay, yeah, at least 8 of their ships. 8 out of 15. I'll take those. Odds. Sir, those are terrible odds. Not compared to 15 to 1, they're not. The proximity alarm started blaring as they closed in on the Krellian fleet. On screen, Zorth's flagship was trying to rotate away, its engines burning bright as it attempted to put some distance between itself and the approaching insanity. The other ships were braking in every direction, their perfect military formation now looking like someone had kicked an anthill. 5 seconds, Tommy announced. 4, 3. Captain, I really hope you know what you're doing. That makes 2 of us. Fire the laser. The mining laser, designed to cut through solid asteroid rock at close range, activated at full power. The beam shot out from their engineering port, bright blue and absolutely not meant to be used as a weapon. It hit their spreading debris field at exactly the angle Tommy had calculated. And then physics decided to take a coffee break while chaos took the wheel. The lasers scattered, refracted, bounced off chunks of frozen waste and spinning beer cans and pieces of actual garbage, splitting into dozens of smaller beams that shot out in every direction like the universe's most offensive light show. Each reflected beam, weakened but still carrying enough energy to cause problems, lanced through space toward the panicking Krellian ships. "It's working," Tommy screamed. "Captain, it's actually working! Why is it working? Because we believe in ourselves!" Jake yelled back, which was not a valid scientific explanation but seemed appropriate for the moment. The reflected laser beams struck shields, overloaded sensors, and caused general mayhem. One beam hit the bridge of a Krellian destroyer, frying their navigation systems. Another punched through a cruiser's shield emitter, sending sparks cascading across its hull. A third hit what appeared to be a fuel line, causing a small explosion that sent the ship spinning. And then the bad idea, still accelerating, still trailing its payload of weaponized garbage, plowed directly through the middle of the Krellian formation like a very angry, very disgusting bowling ball. "Brace! Brace! Brace!" Priya shouted, grabbing onto anything that was bolted down. They hit the debris cloud from a Krellian ship that had collided with its neighbor. Metal screamed. Shields that shouldn't have been able to withstand the impact somehow held. The bad idea shuddered, rolled, and kept going, emerging on the other side of the formation with sparks flying from every surface and at least 2 hull breaches that Priya was already mentally triaging. "Status," Jake demanded, checking his console while trying not to throw up from the G-forces. "We're alive," Tommy reported, sounding surprised. 8 Krellian ships disabled, 4 more with major damage. Remaining 3 are retreating. "Captain, we just took out a battle fleet with garbage and a mining laser." "And friendship," Jake added. "And massive disregard for self-preservation," Priya corrected, already moving to assess the damage. "We have fires on 3 decks. The port engine is held together by hope and prayer, and I'm pretty sure our navigation computer just achieved sentience briefly before passing out." On the view screen, the Krellian fleet was in full retreat, their ships limping away at maximum speed. In the middle of the battlefield, floating among the debris and frozen waste, Commander Zorth's flagship hung dead in space, all its systems overloaded. Jake's console beeped. Incoming transmission. He opened it. Zorth's face appeared on screen, scales pale, eyes wide. "What are you?" Jake grinned. "Just a guy who really commits to bad ideas, Commander. No hard feelings?" The transmission cut off as Zorth's ship kicked its emergency engines online and fled. "Captain," Tommy said quietly, pulling up the bounty board. "We just technically won 1,000,000 credits." "We can't collect," Jake pointed out. "They said humans need not apply." "Yeah, but—" Tommy's grin. "There was absolutely wicked. They didn't say we couldn't do it anyway." Priya walked over and handed Jake his beer back. It was somehow still cold. "You're buying the first round when we get back to port." "Doc, I'm buying the first 10 rounds. We just won a battle with sewage and positive thinking." "Please never say that sentence again." "Too late. I'm putting it on a t-shirt." Outside, the stars slowly stopped spinning as the bad idea's systems stabilized. Inside, 3 humans sat in comfortable silence, the kind that comes from surviving something that definitely should have killed them. It was a pretty good Tuesday. The SS Bad Idea limped through space like a drunk uncle after a wedding reception, mostly functional, definitely damaged, and telling anyone who'd listen about the amazing thing that just happened. "Okay, real talk," Jake said, finally allowing himself to relax in his captain's chair, which had somehow survived the ordeal despite being held down by bolts he'd installed, himself using a YouTube tutorial. "On a scale of 1 to court-martial, how much trouble are we in?" Priya was running diagnostics on her medical equipment, most of which had decided that today was a good day to stop working properly. "Well, let's see. We engaged a hostile fleet without authorization, used a civilian mining laser as a weapon, violated at least 47 safety regulations, and turned our waste disposal system into an improvised kinetic weapon. So I'm going to say solid 8.5. Could be worse," Tommy chimed in, still riding the adrenaline high. "Could be a 9. Kid, I appreciate your optimism, but we literally threw garbage at them." "Yeah, but it worked." Jake had to concede the point. "He's got us there, Doc. Results matter. We disabled 12 ships, forced 3 into retreat, and didn't lose a single crew member. Technically speaking, that's a flawless victory. Technically speaking, we should all be dead," Priya countered. "But there was no heat in it. She'd already accepted that logic had left the building the moment she'd signed on to this crew. Our shields held at 37% past their rated capacity. That's not possible. Our hull withstood impacts that should have torn us apart. Also not possible. And somehow, your insane laser disco ball plan actually worked. The universe loves us, Jake said simply. The universe is deeply confused by us and doesn't know how to kill us properly. Same difference. Tommy spun in his chair, pulling up the damage report on his console. Okay, so the good news is we still have engines, life support, and most of our hull. The bad news is, our navigation system thinks we're a toaster. The port airlock won't close all the way, and there's a small fire in the mess hall that I'm pretty sure has been there since before the battle. That's just Carl, Jake said dismissively. Who's Carl? The fire. We named him. He's fine. He knows what he's doing. Priya closed her eyes and counted to 10 in 3 different languages. We have a pet fire named Carl. Had him for weeks. Very low maintenance. I need a new career, Priya muttered. But she was already pulling up the repair checklist because, despite everything, she was committed to keeping these idiots alive. We need to dock somewhere for repairs. Preferably before the port engine decides to just give up entirely. Jake checked the star charts. Nearest station is waypoint 7. 3 hours at current speed, assuming nothing else breaks. Everything's going to break, Tommy predicted cheerfully. But we'll probably make it. That's the spirit, kid. The console beeped. Incoming transmission. Jake raised an eyebrow and opened it, half expecting it to be an angry Krellian demanding a rematch. Instead, it was Earth Command. Specifically, Admiral Patricia Okoye, a woman whose reputation for being simultaneously impressed and horrified by Jake's antics was legendary. Captain Riley, she said, her dark face carefully neutral in that way that meant she was trying very hard not to smile. I just received a priority alert that a battle fleet was engaged in Epsilon sector. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you? Admiral, Jake said, sitting up straighter and trying to look professional despite his shirt being untucked and his hair looking like he'd been electrocuted. I can explain. Can you explain how a single frigate defeated 15 Krellian warships using what my preliminary reports describe as, and I'm quoting here, aggressive garbage disposal? In my defense, it was very aggressive garbage. Admiral Okoye's carefully maintained neutral expression cracked slightly. Captain, I'm looking at the tactical data right now. You accelerated to Mach 7. You used your waste systems as a weapon. You somehow turned a mining laser into an improvised disco ball. Do you have any idea how many regulations you violated? Doc says 47. Doc is wrong. It's 63, I counted. Is that a new record? Yes, Captain, that's a new record. Congratulations. She leaned back in her chair. The Krellian Empire has already filed a formal complaint. They're claiming your tactics were, quote, psychologically damaging and fundamentally unfair. Tommy pumped his fist silently in celebration. Priya just put her head in her hands. Here's the thing, though, Admiral Okoye continued, and now she was definitely smiling. They're also withdrawing all their fleets from the border sectors and requesting a non-aggression treaty. Apparently, and I'm reading from their official statement, they have no interest in fighting an enemy that shows such blatant disregard for their own survival. So, rules violation aside, you just accidentally negotiated peace with the Krellian Empire. Jake blinked. We did? You did. The Galactic Council is calling it a diplomatic miracle. I'm calling it the most expensive game of chicken in military history. She shook her head. I should court-martial you. I really should. But instead, I'm putting you in for a commendation. And then I'm sending you as far away from anything important as possible, because you 3 are a menace to organized warfare. Thank you, Admiral. Don't thank me yet. Your next assignment is escorting a diplomatic convoy through the Outer Rim. Boring. Routine. Absolutely nothing can go wrong. Tommy and Priya exchanged glances. Admiral, Priya said carefully, you realize that by saying nothing can go wrong, you've basically guaranteed something will go wrong. I know, Admiral Okoye said. I'm counting on it. You 3 are too dangerous to keep near civilization, but apparently you're also too effective to ground. So I'm weaponizing your chaos and pointing it at our enemies. Try not to start an intergalactic incident. No promises, Jake said. I know. Okoye out. The transmission ended. The 3 of them sat in silence for a moment, processing what had just happened. So, Tommy said finally, we won. We won, Jake confirmed. With garbage. With garbage. And we're getting a medal. And probably also a very stern talking to. Priya stood up, walked over to Jake, and handed him back his beer. It was somehow still cold, despite everything. You know what? I'm not even going to ask anymore. Physics has given up on us. The universe is confused by us, and apparently we're now a diplomatic asset. I'm just going to accept it. Jake took the beer, raised it in a toast. To the SS bad idea. May she hold together with duct tape and prayers for at least one more mission. To aggressive garbage disposal, Tommy added. To somehow not dying, Priya finished. They clinked Jake's beer bottle against Tommy's coffee mug and Priya's medical scanner, because nothing on this ship was standard and they'd stopped pretending otherwise months ago. Outside, the stars continued to shine, completely indifferent to the fact that 3 humans had just rewritten the rules of space combat using sewage, a mining laser, and absolute conviction that everything would work out fine. Somewhere, in a Galactic Council chamber, Ambassador Clorp was updating his files on human combat tactics. Under Hold My Beer, he simply wrote, "Run, just run." The emergency session of the Galactic Council reconvened exactly 4 hours after the Battle of Epsilon Sector, which was already being referred to in military databases as the garbage incident by everyone except the humans, who were calling it, "That time we were awesome." Ambassador Clorp stood at the central podium. All 7 eye stalks focused on different points in the chamber, a nervous habit that had gotten significantly worse since humans had joined the galactic community. In his tentacles, he held a datapad containing the full battle report. He'd read it 6 times. It hadn't gotten less insane. "Esteemed colleagues," he began, his voice translated into 43 languages simultaneously. "We now have a complete analysis of the phrase, 'Hold my beer' and its tactical implications." The chamber fell silent. Even Representative Thrix, who'd been contemplating retirement, leaned forward with interest. Clorp pulled up the battle footage on the main holographic display. Every council member watched as the SS Bad Idea accelerated toward the Krellian fleet, waste disposal bays open, trailing frozen garbage like the universe's most offensive comet. "As you can see," Clorp continued, trying to keep his tentacles from trembling. "When a human says, 'Hold my beer,' it signals the beginning of what they call a plan, but what we would classify as a complete abandonment of survival instinct, tactical doctrine, and basic physics." "But it worked," Ambassador Yith said quietly, still staring at the footage of the mining laser bouncing off frozen sewage to create an improvised weapons system. "Yes," Clorp agreed miserably. "It worked. They defeated a battle fleet, using garbage, a civilian mining tool, and what our psychologists are calling weaponized overconfidence. The Krellian ships are in therapy. Their commander submitted his resignation. 3 ships are still trying to get the smell out of their ventilation systems." Representative Thrix's crystalline structure flickered with what might have been amusement. "Ambassador, what exactly are you proposing?" Clorp set down his datapad and looked around the chamber with all 7 eye stalks. "I'm proposing that we update our military databases, our tactical manuals, and our entire understanding of combat doctrine to include one simple rule. If a human says, 'Hold my beer,' do not engage. Retreat immediately. Do not pass go. Do not collect 200 credits. Just run." "That's not a military strategy," protested General Vrix, a 6-armed warrior species who'd built his career on aggressive tactics. "That's cowardice." "No, General, that's survival," Clorp corrected. "The humans don't fight like we do. They don't think like we do. When faced with impossible odds, our species retreat or negotiate. Humans?" He pulled up another clip, this one showing Captain Riley's face as he said those 3 fateful words. "Humans see impossible odds as a personal challenge." "But surely there's a limit," argued Ambassador Yith. "Surely there are situations where human tactics won't work." "We thought a 15-to-1 advantage was that limit," Clorp said flatly. "We were wrong. I've reviewed every human military engagement in the past cycle. Do you know what the common factor is? The more impossible the situation, the more likely humans are to win. It's like the universe is rewarding them for being stupid." "Or," said a new voice from the back of the chamber, "we're just very good at creative problem solving." Every head, eye stalk, and sensory organ in the chamber turned to see Ambassador Lisa Chen of Earth, who'd been sitting quietly in the observer section, trying very hard not to laugh during the entire presentation. "Ambassador Chen," Clorp said, his tentacles going rigid, "I didn't realize you were attending this session." "Wouldn't miss it for the world," she said, walking down to the main floor with a smile that made every species present slightly nervous. "I've been listening to you analyze human tactics for the past 20 minutes, and I think you're missing the point." "Enlighten us," Thrix said dryly. "The point isn't that we're crazy, though we absolutely are. Lisa pulled up the battle footage again, freezing it on the moment the bad idea plowed through the Krellian formation. The point is that we're unpredictable. You've all spent thousands of years developing military doctrine based on logic, caution, and acceptable losses. We didn't. We developed military doctrine based on one simple question. What if we just tried the stupid thing and saw what happened? That's not doctrine, General Vrix protested. That's chaos. Exactly. Lisa agreed. And chaos is very hard to defend against. When you've spent your entire civilization building defenses against logic. Clorp's tentacles drooped. So you're saying there's no way to predict human tactics because you don't use tactics. You just do whatever sounds most likely to work despite being completely insane. Now you're getting it. Lisa beamed at him like a teacher whose student had just solved a difficult equation. Look, we're not trying to be scary. We're just trying to win. And sometimes winning means turning your garbage into a weapon, or using a mining laser as a disco ball, or any number of things that sound stupid until they work. But what does it mean? Yith asked desperately. What does hold my beer actually mean? Lisa's smile widened. It means watch this. It means I'm about to do something that survival instinct says is impossible, but I'm going to do it anyway because I believe it'll be awesome. It means, she paused for dramatic effect, that you should probably take a few steps back, because things are about to get interesting. The chamber erupted in nervous chittering and alarmed discussions. Clorp raised a tentacle for silence. Ambassador Chen, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I have one final question. Shoot. Are all humans like Captain Riley and his crew? Lisa pretended to think about it. Well, Jake's definitely on the more enthusiastic end of the spectrum. But yeah, generally speaking, if you put a human in an impossible situation, their first instinct isn't to give up. It's to find the most creative, ridiculous, borderline insane solution possible and commit to it completely. She pulled up one more image on the display. Captain Riley, Lieutenant Patel, and Ensign Kowalski standing in front of their damaged ship, all three of them grinning like they just won the lottery instead of nearly dying in a garbage-based combat operation. So here's my recommendation, Lisa said. Update your databases, warn your fleets, tell everyone that if they hear a blay, humans say, hold my beer. It means they're about to witness something that defies explanation but will probably work anyway. She looked around the chamber. Or, you could just be friends with us. We're a lot less scary when we're on your side. You're scary either way, Clorp muttered, but there was grudging respect in his voice. We prefer the term endearingly chaotic. The Council voted unanimously to establish a non-aggression treaty with Earth and to add a new section to the Galactic Military Database. Under human combat doctrine, they listed every tactic humanity had used in the past cycle, followed by a single note in bold text. Warning. Humans operate under the assumption that physics is negotiable and impossible is just a strong suggestion. Engage with extreme caution. If human says, hold my beer, immediate retreat is advised. May God have mercy on your soul. 3 sectors away, Captain Jake Riley was already planning his next mission, which involved escorting a diplomatic convoy through the Outer Rim. It was supposed to be boring and routine. Hey, Doc, he said, pulling up the mission briefing. You know what would make this convoy mission more interesting? Priya didn't even look up from her medical supplies inventory. No. You didn't even hear my idea. Don't need to. The answer is no. What if we... Still no. Tommy spun in his chair, grinning. Captain, I think what Doc is trying to say is that she's absolutely on board with whatever insane plan you're about to suggest. That is not what I'm saying. Too late. I'm writing it in the log. Jake pulled out a beer, cracked it open, and took a sip. Outside, the stars beckoned with infinite possibilities, most of them involving property damage and diplomatic incidents. You know what, crew, he said, raising his beer in a toast. I've got a good feeling about this next mission. Priya and Tommy looked at each other. We're going to die, Priya said. Probably, Tommy agreed. But it's going to be epic, Jake added. That doesn't make it better. Sure it does. The SS Bad Idea jumped to hyperspace, carrying 3 humans who'd accidentally become the galaxy's most effective deterrent against war, simply by being too chaotic to fight against. Somewhere in the universe, physics was filing a complaint. Nobody was listening.